This is Backstage with the Queensland Choir. My name is James Haywood. Over the past few weeks, the Queensland Choir and guests have been getting ready to sing Handel's epic oratorio, Messiah. And in the lead up to that event, I thought I'd catch up with our musical director, Kevin Power, who will provide us with some insights. Thank you for joining us, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Now, when it comes to Handel's Messiah, there's a lot of myths. We often hear about the fact that the score was stained with his tears. We sometimes hear about the fact that he locked himself away in a room, refusing to eat for a number of weeks whilst composing. Can you set the record straight? What actually happened in the weeks that Handel composed the work?
Well, it's hard to know exactly. One of the myths is that he wrote it in about 3 weeks, which is true. But people presumed that that was because he had divine inspiration for that and he must have locked himself away. I mean, that was normal timing for Handel. He'd written some of his other operas in 2 weeks, which are even longer, more music. So the ability to do that was nothing unusual for him. I think what's interesting about this is that he premiered it in Dublin. It came at a very difficult time in his life because he'd been living in London by this stage for about 25 years, and the times were getting a bit tough because he'd had huge success as a composer of Italian opera, but after 2 decades, people were starting to get a bit weary of Italian opera, and somebody else had set up a second opera company in London, which was a serious challenger to him, and being the new people were attracted to something new. There'd also started to be things like the Beggar's Opera, the ballad opera, which was a parody and was taking the mickey out of the pretentiousness of grand opera, which was again turning people away from it. And so he was having to think to himself, what do I do to make a living? Because he'd lost money. His last 2 Italian operas were failures. He'd lost a lot of money. And he had an invitation about that time from the Duke of Devonshire, who was the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, to come to Dublin to do some concerts there. And so he took it. But he didn't just go for the premiere of the Messiah. He had no intention to do the Messiah there when he went.
Fascinating.
They ran a couple of series of 6 concerts of all sorts of music that had already been written, choral, instrumental, some of the operas or parts of the operas were performed. He ended up staying in Dublin for 9 months, which was a whole season, a whole year of music. And they did 2 series of 6 concerts, which were very successful, and the second series finished early April, and then for some reason he decided to do the premiere of Messiah there in the middle of April in 1742, but he'd written it already before he left. He wrote it in London, so it was not written while he was there.
And essentially, with the Messiah, it was something new. It was an oratorio. I mean, he'd written some oratorios before Messiah. But can you explain for our viewers the difference between an oratorio and an opera?
There's not a lot. Well, it comes in the word oratorio comes from the Latin root meaning to pray, and also to speak in public, to orate, oration, and that sort of word. So basically, an oratorio is a work based on a sacred subject. All of Handel's 28 other oratorios are based on stories from the Old Testament. They had characters like operas. Individual singers took each part. They spoke to each other. They spoke to the audience during the performance in the way they did in opera. There were no costumes, no sets, and no long rehearsal periods. It was sung in English, which made it understandable by the audience, unlike Italian opera, because the English people in those days didn't speak a lot of Italian. He also didn't have to import expensive Italian superstar sopranos and tenors to perform them. So it was a lot cheaper for him. And the only big difference musically is that the role for the chorus is much more important in an oratorio than it is in an opera. Usually some of his operas have no chorus or it's fairly perfunctory. But in this, the chorus can be characters. They can be an army of one side and an army of the other side as well. But they do fulfill like the idea of a Greek chorus in a Greek tragedy, that they fill the audience in on a lot of the background of what's happening as well. So that's the basic difference. I mean, Handel didn't change the style of opera he wrote. They would equate to a concert performance of an opera where the singers just stand up in their concert dress and sing an opera. So to all extents and purposes they are religious operas done without any costumes, because it was not allowed at that time to portray biblical characters on the stage.
Religious, but still quite dramatic, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They are very, very much dramatic pieces. And you know, the Messiah was performed 36 times by Handel in his lifetime. He conducted it never in a church. It was always in a concert hall as a money-making adventure for him.
Well, that's the context. Turning more towards the technical side of things now, Messiah is quite a large work. There's a lot involved, a lot to get ready in a short space of time. What sort of techniques do you rely upon to get the amateur singers up to speed?
Anything that'll work. Well, it's difficult because you have a lot of different levels, you know, both of voice. Some people are fully trained singers that are singing with us. Some have never had a singing lesson in their life. Some have never sung in a choir before. Some people read music to pick it up and sing it. Some people don't read music at all. I mean, what you hope for in a choir, in any community choir, you're going to find that range. And you hope that, you know, the strong points of one will balance out the weak points of another, and that overall it all hangs together. What I spend the most time on, of course, is trying to get it together. That we agree on what the tempo is going to be, that we can start together, where we're going to sing loud, where we're going to sing soft, sometimes crucially where we're going to breathe, all of that sort of stuff, and trying to get the choir to have a feeling of being together and putting over the same message. So starting to talk about what the mood of the thing is, where the mood changes, that sort of thing, so that we agree on the overall conception of the piece. I wish there were shortcuts for some of what I have to do, because some of it works to a certain extent, but people don't understand when you get in a big space like the City Hall, how hard you have to work to get the voice to travel to the back of the stage. You know, singing the way you do at home won't work in there, even with 150 people. You've really, it's a big slog and it's a big sing.
Yes.
You know, there's the best part of, well, over 2.5 hours of music in Messiah. So that's a long time to be on stage, and a lot of high notes, a lot of difficult notes. You know, I mean, Handel had it easy, actually. He had 22 or 32 maybe in the first chorus that ever did it. And they were all trained singers. So when he came to the really difficult bits, the coloratura bits, where he has a lot of fast notes on one word, where he wants to emphasize that word, we're doing it with the whole choir, which we need to do in a big hall. But Handel had so many singers that they were performing in smaller venues with more intimate acoustics. He would just get the 2 or 3 best people who could sing that the best, and just they would do those hard bits.
Oh, fascinating.
Then he'd bring the others in when he got the big chords again, the louder bits.
Right.
Now, if we tried to do that, I'd love to be able to go and pick the 2 or 3 best singers and get them to do the coloratura bits, but in the City Hall, the people would be,
Yes.
you know, where'd they go, sort of thing. So we're doing it with the whole group, and that takes time, and there's no shortcuts for doing that, unfortunately.
Well, having done it over many years with you, I feel that I'm well prepared for the performance, so I hope it goes well. Now, the main purpose of these interviews is not only to provide context, but also to encourage people to join us to sing. So if someone were listening in or watching this and they wanted to join us next year for our choral season, how would you encourage them to join? What would you say?
Oh, give it a go. I think we're very happy for people to come and sit in, because if you haven't sung in a choir before, you may not understand how it operates. Some people will come and find that we move too fast for them, they can't keep up. Other people will find us too slow. Some may think we don't sing the sort of music they want to sing. We do demand a certain level of commitment, so people have got to be aware of that. But the great thing about a choir is that, you know, the total is so much more than the sum of the individual parts. As I was saying, you get somebody who's very rhythmical, but they're not haven't got a great voice. Other people got a great voice, not so good rhythm. If you stand them side by side, they balance each other out. And when you put it all together, one person's strong points is another person's weak ones, and everybody pulls everybody up so that together we can get these pieces to professional standard, or where we can perform with professional soloists and orchestras without any embarrassment. And that's something which as individuals we couldn't do. And it's, you know, when you see the choir come off stage after a great performance of Messiah, some of them sort of float out the tunnel of the City Hall because it's just such a satisfying sense of achievement that you've actually managed to get to do that and to sing something like that. So yeah, it's hugely rewarding and great experience.
No, I certainly feel the same way as you've described after seeing Messiah. So if you would like to hear us sing Handel's epic oratorio on the 8th of December at 3 p.m. in Brisbane City Hall, simply head to our website for tickets, queenslandchoir.com. We hope to see you there.